Okay, we're live. And then it didn't pop up there. It was fucking with me. I thought it was messed up. Welcome back to Schedule One, friends.
Good to have you, Psychonauts, back.
Glad you're with us again. As usual, we're saying a prayer that we all don't get caught by the pigs and that we all don't overdose. And so far, it's worked out. Not for everybody, of course, but we're making a pretty good probability right here. If it was statistics, I'd bet on us.
Terrence has our back, dude. All we got to do is pray to him, and he'll keep the pigs off of us.
Did you see that the Doug Benson joke? Now it's I'd like to congratulate drugs on winning the war on drugs.
No, I haven't. That's really funny.
But we're back this episode, and we're gonna talk about some tryptamines. Actually, I think I'm using that term right. Some tryptamines.
I believe you are.
We what did we do last episode? I completely fucking forgot.
It was the 2CE and I think the candy flip.
Okay, the 2CE and the candy flip. And those are phenethylamines, maybe. Who knows? I'm using a lot of vernacular I don't have a clue about, but we took some tryptamines, specifically for HOMET, or we're going to refer to it in this cast as the four hoes. It is a tryptamine written about in Tickle. If you're caught up to date on your Psychonaut reading, it's by the same guy who wrote Pickle. Another great read. We're also going to talk about some 4-ACO DMT, which is mostly related to synthesized psilocybin, or that's how most people describe it.
Yeah, what's interesting is, again, we're no chemists, but both the drugs, both the 4-HOS and the 4-ACO, chemically, they're pretty similar to psilocybin. And I think even one of the names for the 4-HOS is psilocybin. I might be wrong about that, but chemically, they're similar to psilocybin. And cognitively, they have similar effects too, which is pretty cool. It's kind of like cousins of mushrooms.
The 4-ACO DMT, and we'll talk about this later, is when it's processed into your liver and whatnot, it's pretty much the same chemical as psilocin. 4-HOS, 4-HOMET, on the other hand, it's kind of like a different kind of out there thing, and not really. I mean, you can base it kind of as a psilocybin-like experience, but you definitely wouldn't say like, if you ate it and some guy asked you, like, what did I take? You wouldn't say like mushrooms in a blind test. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
You'd say
it
something fuck.
definitely has like its own feel to it. It's regularly, we're referring to the 4-HOS, right?
Yeah, the 4-HOS.
It's online. It's regularly said to feel kind of like a cross between mushrooms and LSD, but still very much its own independent substance. Which, after taking it, I can understand why people would say that, and that's probably the best description you could give to people that haven't taken it. But it is very much its own thing with elements of LSD and mushrooms thrown in there.
Well, we really want to start out, I think, with the choice of the two. We're gonna really talk about the 4-HO first, because this was a trip we had together. We shared this experience.
I do want to ask you though, would you say in your experience, the 4-HOS was closer to psilocybin or LSD?
That's a very interesting question you ask. I would say in my experience, it was more related to psilocybin than LSD. I really haven't gotten many things to give me that LSD vibe. There's not quite a lot of things like it, and a lot of things can kind of feel like mushrooms, a little bit. Mushrooms are just kind of that generic psilocybin, the generic psychedelic experience. Excuse me.
I thought that was interesting. When you mentioned that earlier to you that the 4-HOS felt a lot like Or you guys said they felt more like mushrooms. To me, I'd say it's like a 70-30 LSD mushroom separation. Like it's
Mhm.
mostly, if I had to choose between the two, which one it pulls elements more from. For me, I definitely say LSD. That's interesting. I guess it might just be our brain chemistries. Like you're more prone to the mushrooms and I'm more prone to Lucy.
Yeah, before we start the explanation of the four hose trip, let's preface, that's the word. Let's preface it by saying we didn't have equal trips. We took the 2 CE last time and we didn't have equal trips. I had a much more hard time than Kirk, and the roles reversed this time. Kirk had his ass kicked.
Yeah, it was difficult.
And
Before we jump right into it, the one last piece of preliminary information that I have about the four hose that I thought was really interesting. I don't know how Sweden and the UK grade their drugs. I think they go on a ABC scale instead of a 1, 2, 3 like we do. But the
those
four
bastards, it's all wrong. Everybody knows ABC is better than 1, 2, 3. Didn't you hear Michael Jackson?
the But yeah, so in the UK and Sweden, I believe the four hose are a class A drug, meaning they're like super illegal. And they're like specifically, or the four hose is specifically mentioned as like a class A illegal substance. Whereas over here in the States, you could actually argue for its legality or illegality. It's
Mhm.
technically illegal under, I think it's the Analog Act that just bans, like, it blanketly bans a lot of analogs that are structurally similar to LSD and psilocybin, and I think a few other popular psychedelic compounds. But yeah, for the most part, there is no legislator, or there is no law that
There's no
says.
legislation, yeah.
Thank you. There is no legislation that says 4-home met is illegal in the U.S. At least that's what I got off of my quick search. I just thought that was interesting.
They passed a really recent psychedelic kind of umbrella law in the United Kingdom pretty recently, a few months ago, I think.
I was actually reading reports of what cops were you going to add on to that?
No, no, no. I
Okay.
mean, you probably know more than I do, but just an umbrella law they used to ban a lot of substances recently.
Yeah, so essentially, like the UK government was like, okay, we need to get all chemicals out of here. If it ain't tobacco, alcohol, or nicotine. Actually, no, I think it was I can't remember the three, but it was like three big
Yeah.
substances that they allowed, and literally everything else they said was illegal.
Hmm.
And I was reading interviews from cops across the pond, and they just said it was a ridiculous, unenforceable thing. You know, the UK, they can't keep drugs out of their prison system, like most countries. But the cops were saying, you know, if we can't keep weed out of our prisons, how the hell are we going to keep all these substances out of the country? It's ridiculous. It's an unenforceable law.
I saw a video on Twitter the other day, and it had to be 20 black guys in a jail cell, uh, like like a high security jail cell, not like your UK jail cell with the TV and the window and your little chairs and whatnot. Like probably had like a pot to sit on and shit, and like nothing else. And these guys are fucking turning up in this jail cell, passing around a joint, like getting lit. And it, like, how the fuck are these guys smoking in jail? Like, I don't. The jail system in the United States and pretty much everywhere is just nuts to understand.
Yeah,
But
I mean, you can always smuggle stuff in there. I can't remember where I was yesterday, but someone was breaking down the price of things in prison because I think like cigarettes used to be the main form of currency, but recently ramen became like
yeah,
the bigger form of currency in jail. And this ex-convict was explaining like the value of different things in jail, and essentially, I think he said like it gets up to where a gram of weed is $50. Like I don't know how many packs of ramen or how many packs of cigarettes that's worth, but that's an
I pretty much
assload.
that's dick sucking territory. That's not ramen territory.
I bet even then, like you have to be in the top 10% of dick suckers in prison to suck out some weed from someone because, like,
Hmm.
god damn, that stuff is so expensive in jail.
It makes me amazed of how I bet Lil Wayne was probably high every 2-3 days. So like, when those rap stars go to jail, they definitely ain't suffering as hard as everybody else.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But enough about that. Let's jump into the 4-HO MET, MET, or the 4-HOs as we're now referred to it. So we take this probably a week and a half ago, I want to say. As far as dosages, I think in the range of 10 to 20 is a solid normal dose, where you're going to find most people tripping at. Well, I took 10. How much did you take, Kirk?
13.
And we weigh it the best we can with the scale we have. You have a pretty good scale. But if your finger slips, or it's more 14 or more 12, it could all fuck up with how potent these tryptamines are, milligram per milligram. So there could be a difference there between the 10 and 13, what we're going to explain later in terms of our the different intensity in our trips.
I bet there is. I'd be willing to bet that one, brain chemistry affects like why the experiences were as different as they were. One, but also I think my scale when we're measuring out powders that like if we're weighing out mescaline and we're weighing out 350, 400 milligrams, the scale is fucking perfect for that. But when we go to things that like a dose is under 20 milligrams, I bet my scale has a standard deviation of about 3 or 4 milligrams.
Yeah.
Actually, that seems a bit high, probably. Somewhere in there, though.
At least 1 to 2. At least one
Yeah,
to two is probably where you're going to find your modern, milligram scale, your standard deviation. It's like you throw in your statistics terms.
Yeah, I had 2 days worth of statistics in my math class. Figure I might as well use it.
We take it and we're watching Les Actions, which is the French kind of clip show, I would say.
I don't know what the fuck it is, but yeah, it's just like a clip channel on YouTube.
It's funny. It's got that kind of European humor, and sometimes it's got some what the fuck things from the Russians. A lot of dash cams. But I can't really get into it. Like when this stuff starts kicking in, I can't remember how long it probably took to kick in. I'd say like 20-30 minutes.
I'd agree. I think about 20 minutes for me. I remember I was surprised by how quickly it came on.
I couldn't really get into this shit though, so I kind of pulled the covers over my head and was just like sitting there kind of angsty and thinking and whatnot. And I'm like, I'm not gonna respond well to this. Phone call. I guess I'll call him back later. I was like, I'm not gonna respond well to this. Just sitting here in bed. So I get up and I leave to the living room to turn on the radio, just to see if listening to the Tallahassee's hottest hip hop station would kind of talk me down. And when I start listening to the music, I don't really feel kind of like in love with it. Like I'm not, ooh, this is very pleasurable. Like I can feel this in my groins. But I mean, it was nice. It was music. It kind of felt relaxing.
Would you say that the drug affected the music in any way? Like even when you're high, like even on weed, music sounds, at least to me, it definitely sounds better, but not night and day difference. But it does sound better. Or were you getting some like was it? Just
I would say my hearing was definitely more sensitive. I was more sensitive to kind of reverberations and like sound, sound bouncing off of things. I felt like I picked it up more, and necessarily kind of like a ringing aftertone to the kind of the sound. More like it kind of stayed with me and just hummed around. But I wouldn't say like it was better. Like I wouldn't say the music was better. I would say it was a little different, but it wasn't necessarily better. I can't really give you a way to describe it soberly without taking the 4-HOs, but it's definitely not something that you would highlight as a a trait of four hoes to me. Were you listening to the music, or I think you turned on a podcast?
Yeah, so I don't well shit, yeah, I'll just continue. So I was really impressed by how quickly it came on. Though the Ep14 is entertaining, when I trip it's usually hit or miss whether or not I'm like paying attention to it. And this time, like, again, the high just hit me so quickly that it really took me out of the video. The first thing I notice is I'm laying on your futon, and the first thing I notice is I'm staring at the ground, and the ground starts like waving around like I'm laying on top of a giant waterbed, and I'm like, damn, yeah, okay. I For some reason I remember thinking like I trip pretty regularly, at minimum once a month for the past, I don't know, for the past year, but usually it's like once every 2 weeks. But when this came on, I was like, wow, damn, I don't know why, but this is really standing, like it's really standing out as something different and something more unique and I guess stronger. Um, the visuals, like while I was paying attention to that, within minutes they were growing exponentially. Weird. But yeah, within minutes they were growing exponentially, and they evolved very, very quickly. One of the reasons why I say that. Oh, did you want to hop in?
No, I mean, I was just remembering something you telling me, and you said like the visuals were the most intense, like visuals from every kind of psychedelic you've ever taken, like all at once.
Yeah, it was really weird because so one of the things I remember, it eventually just became a fucking mess of just color and shapes, and I couldn't figure out what I was looking at. But as they were evolving, it went from this like wavy ground to there were symbols all over the wall, and that's why I say this was very LSD-like for me, because on acid, I see like waves and symbols and breathing all around. The symbols quickly like kind of turned into shapes. Very, very colorful drug, by the way. The symbols turned into these multicolored shapes that would come off of the wall, and they were just surrounding my vision. And from there, it kind of becomes a shit show of shapes and colors that I can't really remember, but I do remember they were constantly changing. And as I was watching this, I was like, oh wow, that's pretty similar to LSD. Wow, that's kind of similar to mescaline. Huh, that's a little bit of 2CB over there. Like, it was just weird how so many, it was a fucking cornucopia of psychedelic visuals that I was looking at. Oh yeah, continue.
No. I mean, I didn't mean to interrupt you. There was one specific visual you mentioned that I remember, and you said like it was a grinning face, or like Felix the cat or something like that.
That's interesting. I vaguely
You said like a grinning face would pop up, and then it just like completely encircled you, like the whole room.
I am vaguely. I think the Cheshire Cat would probably be, or that was probably what I was getting at, because I do vaguely remember a face, but it's difficult to recall right now.
The Alice in Wonderland cat?
Yeah, the little, like the fucking Alice in Wonderland cat that floats around, and he'll turn invisible except for his eyes and mouth.
Yeah.
But yeah, so another reason why I say this was very reminiscent of LSD to me is it turned my thinking very analytic. I remember I was just like, whatever I decided to think about, I just understood in a very new yet complete way. I was able to think about different parts of my body, or different parts of how I was interacting with the things around me, and I would get like a new understanding for them. Like, if I were to swallow the saliva that's in my mouth, I would be able to construct a mental map of every just droplet of it going down my mouth into my throat, and then I don't know, I'd be able to feel it like more further connect with my body. But after a while, not even after a while, pretty quickly, I started losing the ability to understand what was going on around me.
Yeah.
I remember I was again laying in this futon with a coat, with a blanket or two on top of me, and things started getting really intense really quick. And I was like, okay, I just need to take a break, breathe, put on. Oh yeah, I wasn't listening to music because I didn't have Wi-Fi. It was all pre-downloaded stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided to start alternating between all these different podcasts. And I remember one of the ones that I'm listening to is it's an NPR segment about lying. And I don't know, I get like 30 seconds into it and I just can't grasp what these people are saying. I hear the words, but they have no meaning to
Mm-hmm.
them. So cat doesn't conjure up images of a cat. The and abstract words like that just mean nothing to me.
It's kind of like listening to somebody speak a foreign language.
Yeah, like a foreign language that I had taken an introductory class to. Like I
Yeah.
recognize these words, but they had no meaning to them.
Okay.
So like as I'm like starting to hit this realization that damn, I'm so high, none of this means anything to me. I'm very quickly cycling through episode after episode after episode of all these different podcasts, trying to find something I can tether onto, and nothing's just sticking. And I think for a little while, probably I don't even know why I'm gonna try and put a time on it. Could have been 20 minutes, could have been 1 minute. I I just keep cycling through these podcasts and I realize I have no fucking chance of understanding this and holding on to this. I gotta do something else. So I hop up to go into the living room to join you. Before you pick up with what you were doing, I would like to say part of the analytical side of this drug that was really odd is I could feel parts of my brain shutting down, and that's why this trip was so hard for me. As I was sitting there trying to figure out, like trying to just listen to a podcast, I would feel, and this is really weird to describe, but I would feel a part of myself just stop working. And I would be like, ah, oh, there goes motor function. Ah, there goes arithmetic. Ah, there's English. And I could just feel like all these functions and memories and just knowledge that I have leaving me. And that's about when I decide like I can't fucking do this. I need to go in the living room.
Yeah. Back to where I was, kind of picking up my story. See, you were having a pretty challenging time, I would say. Me, on the other hand, I was having a pretty, I was okay. So I'm in the living room and I got the radio on and I'm not really digging it much. So I'm like, I love tripping outside. So I'm going to fucking sit on the porch. And I got a pretty nice view where I live. We got like the pool and kind of you can people watch because there's a lot of people out as well. And it's pretty good, like nice scenic view. And so I'm chilling out there, and I think I'm having some anxiety because I always have anxiety during my trips, but I'm really, working on my breathing and I'm kind of stressing, kind of de-stressing, I'd say. And as the more the trip comes, kind of the more lax I get.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just chilling, people watching. And I remember the first kind of visual, distinctly what I see is just an awesomeness of color, just the most beautiful color you've ever seen. Like it was like, imagine it was in the north of the United States, colors changing in the leaves, just beautiful kind of landscape, very colorful. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, that does sound really nice.
But
do you have another drug to compare the color experience you had with this to?
I don't think any other drugs made colors quite as vibrant and saturated as this, but maybe 2CE was nearly as bright and kind of intense as this drug. I didn't trip on 2CE outside, you know what I mean? I could just look through the window.
Yeah.
But with this one, it was just like it was like North of the United States in autumn. But here I am in Florida, the middle of the summer, looking at green pine trees. Like that was the colors I was getting. There was like a beautiful just underglow of like red just oozing up. I'll set it like this. So there's kind of 3 tree lines in varying distances from me. And the first tree line has kind of got this very beautiful like green popping. and then a little bit back you're getting these yellow kind of the sun setting, and the sky's kind of red as well, and these shadows that are casting on the trees, the colored shadows. They're making it kind of like they're making these trees just like stand out from the background. Like these shadows are, it's kind of outlining, I want to say, like everything's kind of outlined and bigger and more distinct. um I just stood out there and I was standing up and I was just shocked. I was like, man, I gotta get Kurt and let him look at this shit because it's fucking amazing. Like I was like, I want to get him to bring him out here, but I couldn't fucking like. I was just lost
You
looking at
couldn't
it.
tear yourself away from it.
Yeah, I couldn't tear myself away from it.
Wow.
And eventually, I kind of sit down. I'm still looking at these amazing colors, and when I'm looking at these colors, and it just makes me happy to look at them. Like that's how much I'm enamored with them. And I can hear the radio from outside while I'm sitting. I can hear the radio from inside, excuse me. I can hear it from inside while I'm sitting outside next to the window, but it just kind of sounds like it's kind of like a faint, just voices from the inside.
To give you, the listeners, an idea of the environment, you are, the radio is in the living room, and connecting the living room to the balcony where you're at is this door that was, I assume, open.
No, the door's closed. I'm sitting
okay.
next to like a closed window as well. And I can, it's like what I said earlier, my hearing was kind of amplified, I'd say. Like I could pick up on reverberations and kind of like that. And I could just hear the sound like bouncing off the window and just a little bit of it. And I would start like hallucinating. I don't know if you've ever gotten like really high on like weed, like smoked yourself pretty high. And probably younger kids more than likely, but you kind of hear like the conditioning startup or something like that, and you hallucinate like your parents doing this or that, or somebody talking in an empty house or something like that, making voices from pretty much nothing. And I remember kind of getting kind of twisted about that, but I mean it didn't really shake me. I was kind of shaking it. There was I would say the visuals were more psilocybin mushroomy to me than LSD, but it definitely had that LSD vibe to it. Kind of eerie, kind of creepy, but at the same time kind of clear, kind of sober-minded at sometimes. But I'm sitting there, and this is kind of where I get kind of like thinking, when I get into the like psilocybin philosopher, just thinking, really hard. And I'm people watching, and I'm gonna have to explain this idea. Like I explained this idea to you when we were kind of coming down, and it didn't really make a whole lot of sense. But I mean, I've been thinking about it the past few days, and I think I've kind of made more sense of it. So what I'm doing is I'm just people watching, watching them walk around.
Yeah.
And I get caught up in the idea that, like our brain is all that we are. Like it's our feelings, it's our thoughts, our motives, and everything. Whereas when we really think about a person, we kind of associate all their physical attributes with who they are. Like when you think of me, or when you think of another friend, you have that picture of their body in your mind, specifically their face. But really, all that they are is their brain. And what, you see is the face and the eyes and the mouth. That's kind of just a vessel for the brain to kind of, move around and influence and, maintain whatever homeostasis it has. And so this is where the idea kind of hits me that like brains without the features of the face and without kind of all these things we know, it's just kind of a mass of things that have intelligence, like a mass of tissue that has intelligence. And to me, like that's a lot more sinister in my mind than envisioning like a person. Like when you're thinking about just a blob that's thinking, it's much more kind of eerie. You sympathize with people and faces, but you don't sympathize with.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, because you can't humanize it.
You're just not sympathizing with intelligence. And so that really sparks me into this idea of, artificial intelligence versus intelligence. And I kind of had this revelation during the idea that I don't really like the term artificial intelligence, because we really haven't even discovered, what makes intelligence intelligence.
Mhm.
An operating system or a robot that's kind of been taught to think a little bit and to problem solve. That's man-made intelligence, but at the same time, like, it's very similar to what we have. We just have a much more rudimentary biological intelligence.
Mhm.
And I think in the future, we're gonna have a lot of philosophical debates between artificial intelligence and, biological intelligence, because they're really not that much different. Right now they're pretty different. Right now we haven't really figured out what makes, sentience and what makes independent thinking and free will, but we'll get there one day, definitely.
Mhm.
And we're gonna have a lot to think about in terms of, what really is intelligence. I went on a tangent, but it was an interesting idea to think about, and definitely something I sat out there and I thought about for a long time. I didn't make any huge ground or in giant connections, but I thought it was, an enjoyable part of the trip, and being very very, you said your brain was shutting down, you couldn't really think, but me, I could really like process things pretty well, and I just kind of got thought patterns and went down rabbit holes of ideas and whatnot. And I really enjoyed that about the four hoes.
I can agree to that. After, and I'll get to this in a minute, after I started to come back, I was in that kind of analytical thinking where I was I could either have little eureka moments that just come out of nowhere, or I could really ponder an idea and just really, really think about it from all different angles. And I did enjoy that. That's another aspect that seemed, again, it's been a while since I've done mushrooms. I definitely need to revisit those little bastards, because I kind of forgotten the thought process on mushrooms. But that's part of why I say this was similar to LSD for me. Um, but picking up, I I do want to say that before I decided to quit listening to the podcast and head into the room, I was kind of freaking out because I was feeling myself, like, again, I was feeling my brain shut down. But I remember specific
Mm-hmm.
points where I would be like, okay, you're just getting overwhelmed. You know this is a drug. Just close your eyes and breathe. And I would inhale, slowly exhale, and then forgot how to drive a car. And I'm like, okay, I don't think this is me freaking out. I think this is just me shutting down. So
Mm-hmm.
again, I don't know if that's just like maybe I was freaking out, but I thought I was remaining calm. But that was just another aspect of like why the beginning of the trip at least was difficult for me. Um,
We
when I
talk
went,
about
no, sorry.
I didn't mean to cut you off, but we talk a lot about specifically me. I recount a lot of bad trips, but you don't ever really have many bad trips in my experience, or you don't tell me about them. But would you definitely say this was your worst experience?
Yeah, I don't like the term bad trip, especially for this. Like, if I ever take too much acid and I don't know, strip naked and start running around the apartment complex, I'd consider that a bad trip.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't say this was a bad trip at the time. I was really I wasn't a fan of it. Um, but again, that's just because I was going through a difficult part. Like once I got to the living room and sat down and started listening to the music, one of my favorite parts about this trip is I was feeling in the same like hyper specific way I was feeling myself shut down. I was feeling myself come back. So that
Okay.
was really cool. It felt like I had all my years of knowledge and life experience coming back to me, and that was really cool. I was like, yeah, I'm leveling up. I'm getting stronger, better, wiser. This is pretty
Yeah.
awesome. Where I was a child, now I'm becoming a man. I
Yeah.
I was really enjoying that was just like a cool feeling to have. And as like all my thoughts and abilities and memories were coming back, that's also when the analytic thinking started. So as I was feeling like myself becoming me again, I was also able to go down the rabbit hole and branch off into all these different ideas that I was really enjoying. That's one of my favorite parts about tripping is just thinking.
Hmm. Yeah, that's definitely my favorite part. If I can just, sit on the porch for 3-4 hours and just watch the sun go down, which was what I was doing for the most part, is really my most enjoyable kind of psychedelic experience. I've done it on LSD a couple times, but this was one of the times where I could really just get absorbed into a trip, and that's when I like, being immersed into a trip, not to the point where it's scary, where it's too much, but being immersed to the point where, but I'm not, panicking, and
Yeah.
this was kind of that happy medium for me.
I can.
What are you gonna
Oh
say?
yeah. So I was gonna say, I can definitely understand that. Though for whatever reason, like maybe the setting was fine. I'm really comfortable in your apartment. The set, maybe like when I took it, I wasn't expecting it to be like a heavy psychedelic trip, so I kind of
Hmm.
went into it more lackadaisical than I usually do. Maybe that's
Yeah.
part of where the issue was. But I can definitely see the appeal in the four hose. I'm definitely going to revisit it. But it's nice to have LSD like thinking, at least for me. LSD like thinking, and it be so short. It was between 4 and 6 hours, I believe.
No,
Um,
it wasn't.
oh yeah,
Uh,
that's right. That's right. That's right. I forgot it. It did
It
feel
was
longer.
supposed to be anywhere between 4 and 6 hours, but it wasn't at all. It was more or less 8, 9 hours, I would say. Probably 10, 12.
Yeah, I think because it was like we took it at 6 p.m. and we probably didn't go to
We
bed
stayed up all
until
night.
yeah.
I stayed up all night, exactly. I didn't go to sleep until the next morning.
That's right. That's right. I forgot about that.
So, uh, so at this point, I'm still outside and Kirk is inside, and you come get me, and I'm chilling out on the porch, whatnot, and you pop out, and I can see it on your face. You're kind of distressed, and you pop out and you kind of look outside for a little bit, and you can't really remember what you're doing. And then you're like, "Hey, can you come inside for a few minutes?" And I'm like, "Okay, whatever." And that's when you tell me, I'm not, you weren't feeling real good, and you were like, I remember you spouting off some stuff about like, man, I love coming over and whatnot, but we don't have to trip all the time. And, you were feeling kind of at odds with your use at that moment for me. And what I was picking up on, you were
Hmm.
kind of feeling at odds right there. And I was like, damn, man, like, it's not that awful. Like, I'm not having that bad of a time. And I was like, I've never seen something that kind of put you down like that. I've never seen something really kind of depress you like that. That was a new kind of thing for you. And
Yeah, it
I
was
told,
definitely new. Usually, like experiences are not that hard. If anything, it's I mean, like you said earlier, it was a really mirrored situation of the 2CE where you're just struggling. And I'm like, I could go for this. This isn't bad. Pretty fun.
um, we kind of just talked there, and the atmosphere is kind of eerie, whatnot. But I'm like, man, it's gonna be all right. It's gonna cool off. It's gonna come back to you. Don't worry about it. It's gonna be cool. And we really just kind of sit there on the couch and fill out the next 2 hours. I feel like we just kind of just start waiting it out, and I'm trying to get you to laugh every now and then. Like, I'll drop a joke or something like that, but I don't think you can completely understand it with your brain shutting down. But you'll give it like a thoughtful giggle. But we really just like for an hour and a half, I'd say we just listened to the radio and kind of cooled off and kind of made jokes about whatever the guys was saying on the radio or whatnot.
I think part of where like that mentality came from is when I was going over again, I did mention this, but I wasn't expecting to trip, and I think in expecting not to trip and then tripping, that like that kind of
Mhm.
I don't know, that switch in my mindset, or just entering a trip when you were not planning on it at all. I think that's probably, like, I put some of my blame onto that, like
Yeah.
just not having a proper mindset for
I think
where
that's what you kind of got into when you were kind of going down. You were trying to, I don't want to say blame something, but you were trying to figure out what was wrong. Why did I do this or what not? And you kind of get to the blame game, and I took it without being respectful of it or were making time or planning or something like that.
But now that I'm sober and I've had time to reflect, I think that was it. It really took me off guard, because besides that, my worst psychedelic experience was probably like an 8 out of 10. Like,
Yeah, you've never it's amazed me how you've never had a really bad, like, not even a really bad. You've never had like kind of a more negative than positive experience. I want to say maybe the mescaline trip at the beach, but
oh yeah, sure, I forgot about that one.
really that's it. I would say for you. Whereas I've had really bad trips by myself.
Hmm.
I think it's because you don't trip on anything but LSD by yourself.
That is true. Yeah, I mean, now that you mention it, I don't think I have taken anything by myself except for acid.
But at the same time, I've had bad trips off LSD by myself and with people.
Well, see, one of the things I wanted to get at earlier, and I'm glad you just reminded me. Uh, do you think you could use the four hose almost as like an LSD replacement? Because I know you and my roommate last year said you felt like while you enjoy LSD, you feel there's something sinister in the back of your mind. I personally don't get this, and I can't sympathize. But if the four hose is similar enough to LSD in terms of color and visuals, but without that sinister push, and it's not as stimulating with a shorter duration, do you think that's something you could get into as kind of like an acid replacement?
Yeah, I'd probably take 4-HO-MET, 4 O's over SID, acid, LSD,
Hmm.
pretty much any day. You know, an acid trip is much longer than a 4-ACO, or not a 4-HO trip, a 4-HO-MET trip. Acid can last anywhere like 12 to fucking 20 hours sometimes.
Yeah, I
Sometimes I
think.
felt like I've been tripping all day, 24 hours. But the four home met, I'd say, was more probably 8 hours. And just the eeriness with the acid, it goes on so long that you kind of get antsy about it, and you kind of get anxious about it. Uh, and you kind of get in the space where you want it to kind of end quicker, and it's still there. And I can't really explain the eeriness it gives because you can't sympathize. I mean, you can't see what I'm saying.
Mhm.
But I would say a few people out there know what I'm talking about, and our 12 subscribers. I know you guys can feel me right now.
Statistically, I'm sure a couple of you do.
Statistically, at least one of you does. But I mean, it didn't have that same feel with the four hose. It didn't give that kind of eeriness to me. When you did kind of, tell me how you were feeling, it did, it dropped my mood a little bit. Uh, I mean, the difference between being outside on four hose and being inside on four hose was like taking two different drugs.
Wow.
Like inside, it felt very like kind of confined and unsettling, and just I know you weren't up in the best place, and I just felt worried for you at the same time, but at the same time, it was all going to be all right in my mind.
Yeah, like, I mean, we've
Outside,
tripped
like,
enough to rationally know. Like, I know there's a point where you can get so high on a psych that you forgot you've taken drugs. We were
mhm.
not at that point, so I knew it was gonna get better. I was just having kind of a shit time at that moment.
Outside on 4-HO, it was just a very like warm, happy experience. It was just I could get absorbed more into just sitting and watching nature and watching people than I could to just listening to music on the couch, I would say. I mean, there was more to just kind of feed off of to me.
See, that's interesting, and I guess, like, yeah, that just completely slipped my mind. If you're ever having a tough time, go for a walk or go outside. I don't know why that
unless you're having like a time where you can't even remember like who you are, where you are, don't go for a walk.
Okay, yeah, that
Please
should be.
You'll end up somewhere and you'll strip off all your clothes and you'll end up butt naked and you'll end up in the hospital. The police looking at you funny. Don't go for a walk if you're out of your mind, but definitely go for a walk if you're just feeling at odds or feeling down, or you just need a change of pace. A change of pace can change a trip into a whole different drug.
I'd probably say that is one of my bigger regrets, not going outside. I can't believe I didn't even try to see what the sky, the clouds, the grass, the trees look like on the Fort Hose.
We talked about ego death on the cast before, and I think we've talked about kind of a depersonalization in the cast before, but this is my observation of you. You had almost an ego death kind of experience, but also like you had such a different look on your face. Like you almost didn't look like you. Like you were kind of depersonalized. Like I feel like you weren't acting like in a similar fashion. You were kind of you had kind of lost your personality, I want to say. At one point. This is at your rough peak. But you were pretty much a different person. And if you can kind of apply that to me when I had the really bad acid trip, like I felt depersonalized, not acid, when I had the bad mushroom trip.
That's what I was thinking. I was like, when did you have an acid trip that bad?
When I had the mushroom trip really bad a few years ago, and I felt depersonalized for months afterwards. Like I didn't feel like me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you can sympathize with that in those few moments. You got a small feel of it.
Yeah, that must have been hell if that's what you went through for months on end.
I mean, I wasn't tripping, but.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's true. But at the same time,
it was hell, dude. It was hell.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, that's an interesting idea, though. I didn't consider that.
Just the look on your face, mate, brought me down a little bit. I was like, damn, mate, it feels so bad for you on this bad trip. You were even talking about like, the cast and tripping, and you're like, man, we can just put a pause on the cast. I'm like, yeah, I mean, I feel you. At the same time, I mean, I feel you. We don't have to, go out and, forcefully try a new drug every week. Like that's going to put you in a bad place. I definitely understood where you're coming from, and I agreed. But at the same time, just me being in that state of mind, it kind of just brought me down just a tad. I was like, damn, man, I love the cast though. Like
yeah, I was able to pick up on that too, which, I mean, it does blow because I do enjoy this and it's really cool. But at the same time, this is the 14th episode, and I know not every episode is a new drug, but almost every episode is a new drug.
Mm-hmm.
And that's hovering around 13 different psychedelics. Most people could probably name 2, maybe 3 if they're internet savvy. We're going to have to start like hitting some really obscure fucking
We've
sites.
already hit a lot of obscure stuff, man.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't want to drop a lot of, cast talk in the middle of a cast, but
too meta.
To going forward, we're probably gonna hit kind of older stuff, maybe like a different trip or maybe something else revisited again.
I mean, admittedly, I still have like just off the top of my head, there's 5 more psychs that we could do.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna try some new stuff, but definitely don't expect like every episode to be a new substance because that's just impossible. I mean, it's possible, but
yeah, at least in terms of psychs,
by the end.
If the subscribers really start coming in, I guess we can fuck with Fint and Coke and.
Yeah, the subscribers start rolling in. I mean, we'll expand, but really, this for us right now to show our grandchildren how cool we were in the future. But that's pretty much all. I mean, we're gonna try some new stuff. Probably some ketamine in the future or something, different.
I am interested in a couple more of the 2C compounds.
We may try some tickles or some pickles again.
Go to the typical recipe books and see what we can find.
Yeah. But and that's enough for the two metacasts. Where did we even drop off for the four hose? I think we talked about kind of your down point, and you slowly started to come back, and I started to sober up too, and eventually you get past the peak, and you're pretty solid. Probably about 4 hours in, we were pretty solid, and we sit out on the porch to smoke a bill, and marijuana, cannabis is synergetic with the four hose. If you didn't know,
like most
useful
things.
advice. Useful advice. Marijuana is pretty synergetic with a lot of psychedelics. Some not so much. Some really bad, But
after doing
with four hose, it was pretty good.
After doing a bit of research about smoking on psychedelics, I think the way to approach that is to smoke after the peak. If you smoke before, then like I don't get anxious or paranoid really at all when I smoke.
You don't really have any kind of, I mean, just you in general, you're not very an anxious person. That's not your brain chemistry compared to some of us. Some of us are more afflicted and not as privileged as you, but you really don't get anxiety.
But yeah. So like again, I haven't tried smoking before the peak of a psych, and so like I was saying, personally, there's not a whole lot of anxiety or paranoia when I smoke, unless like there's a fucking loud knock at the door or something.
Police open up. That's when I get pretty anxious. But other than that,
but I'd be willing to bet like maybe my paranoia and anxiety levels are usually so low that them being raised by Kush doesn't register. But I'd be willing to bet while I'm on a psych and my emotions are just way overblown and exaggerated, if I were to smoke, that raise in anxiety and paranoia, I would be able to notice pre-peak. But if you smoke after the peak, then I feel like that's where the real synergy is. That's where you can calm yourself down. That's where you can kind of fog up the trip if that's what you need to do to kind of separate yourself from how powerful the trip is.
Definitely smoking pre-peak is that's a dice roll, man. Like my favorite movie that I live by. That's a bold move, Cotton. I've definitely smoked before. I mean, pretty much everything. Like mushrooms and the tryptamines. They're pretty solid. Solid on smoking. LSD, nah. You probably don't want to smoke on LSD or any deep psychedelics. Really, you don't want to smoke before the peak unless it's mushrooms. Then I'd say smoke all you want. Smoke before the peak, smoke during the peak, smoke after the peak. Like
yeah, I think I actually have smoked. The only thing I've smoked before the peak on would be mushrooms, and I think it was synergistic. It made the trip better.
So we go outside and we start puffing on some the Mary Jane, and it's probably midnight, I would say. You fucking about, mate?
Yeah, sorry.
It's probably midnight when we're out there smoking. I remember we packed like one bowl and we were passing it back and forth, and it honestly got to the point to me where the visuals were so like intense that I couldn't really put the bowl to my mouth and light it. Like it looked like the bowl was 4 feet long and the lighter was right on my eyelid. Like I was like, man, I mean, I'm liking the smoke and whatnot, but I really don't want to light this anymore. I'm kind of getting nauseous. That also brings me and we talked about the trip outside a whole lot. We conversed about what we felt about it. If we're going to take 4 hose again, and at that point, I mean, we were pretty sold off of it. Like we weren't ever going to take 4-HOMET again, but you think about it for a while and your curiosity gets the best of you and you forget all the bad points. You're like, yeah, I could probably try it again. But I remembered kind of a few things we talked about out there, and the trip, like to me, visually, it came in kind of waves. Like it was it was like periods that were different than other, and I could see like the periods change within a certain amount of time, like 30 minutes, and then there'd be another wave of kind of a different feel, and then another 30 minutes, and it kind of changed to something else. Like, it was interesting that I could see like all these changes happening, and me going through the phase of the drug was really noticeable. Like, you could definitely section off points of this timeline as like come up, peak, come down, you know,
I could understand
after
that. Yeah,
effects.
I agree. I don't know if you would call that like an increase in like an analytical perspective caused by the
Mhm.
drug. I don't know what exactly would cause that, but yeah, more so than like, take MDMA for example. The lines are really blurred as to what part of the well, shit, I guess except for the anxiety filled come up. The lines are really blurred as to exactly where on the timeline you are in that drug. But with this, I mean, it was, I don't know, I feel like I could fill out a percentage of how strong I was feeling it. And like I could just, I don't know, I had a real understanding of what it was doing and how it was affecting
There was another thing I got with it, like a big staple of the drug was like a time distortion, and our timeline on this trip hasn't been, you know, A1. You haven't probably been able to follow along exactly,
me.
but time distortion was like, I think I sat on the porch for like 4.5 hours, when all in reality I probably sat out there like an hour and a half. Like, I felt like I watched the sun go down, night come out, like everything, and it only had been like an hour. Like, I mean, I couldn't even quantify how long time was or think about it. Like, there was no way I could say like, yeah, we took the drug an hour and a half ago, and it feel like it'd be a day later. Super, super time distorted.
I can agree to that, yeah.
Um, I mean, we sat outside and we talked about the trip and whatnot, smoked a bowl. I think it definitely had one of those, like, kind of like where it makes you kind of talkative, you know, talk more.
There's definitely
Uh,
empathy there.
Definitely empathy there. Not as powerful as MDMA by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, you're not going to tell
Uh,
a stranger your whole life story, but it can
yeah, you're
definitely
not gonna
kick up some conversations.
not a truth serum like some people have on MDMA. But it definitely does bring out kind of an empathetic feeling in you. The come down, more of the after effects. I think we just chilled outside and talked for a long time. I mean, I really don't know because of the time distortion and whatnot, but we kick it and go inside, and we try to go to sleep, I think, and you know, we don't sleep at all that night.
Yeah, it was real shit. One of the podcasts that I listen to pretty regularly is on average about 4.5 hours long. And I remember as I lay down, I'm like, okay, I'm just going to listen to this until I fall asleep. And after a while, I'm like, damn, I'm really not that tired. And I look, and there's only 15, 20 minutes left of the episode.
Yeah.
Like, there was just no sleeping. I didn't feel stimulated per se. I just couldn't sleep.
Yeah, I couldn't sleep. Like, it was nuts. We'd never really taken a psychedelic that late. But I mean, we tried to go to bed 3 a.m., I would say.
Hmm.
Maybe in 4 a.m. I mean, like, I felt like it was late. I'd say probably three more. But I mean, every time we've taken a psychedelic, we've taken it early in the day, and we've always been able to fall asleep at night.
Well, that
You
and
know,
your
with
coach
some
never hurts.
with some trouble, we can usually fall asleep at night. But this, man, this was impossible to fall asleep.
Yeah, I didn't feel so much like it was LSD and I'm like wide awake, wired,
Yeah,
but it was like it felt like it was midday, like just not that time to go to sleep.
yeah, it felt like it was like noon, and I had just woken up for the day. You know, I was ready to, you know, be kind of active and whatnot, but at the same time, I was a little tired. Like, my brain was tired. Like, I was
Hmm.
tired of tripping all day, all the night.
Yeah, night tripping definitely has its appeals, but it's overall not really for me.
But that was 4HOMET, or the four hoes of the apocalypse, as I like to call it. How would you rate, like, on a scale of 1 to 10? Like, what would you say four hoes to, like, a random person would be?
To a random person, I'd probably tell them like a 7 out of 10, seven
There
and
you
a
go.
half.
How was your experience, like, on a scale of 10?
Um, that particular experience, I put it like a 6.
In my experience, probably a 6 as well. Not not good, tolerable, interesting experience. There was good points and bad points. Actually, I want to button that up. I want to say a low end 7. Like, I just barely made a 7. My trip was distinctly better than yours.
Hmm. I
So
can
I
definitely
don't want.
agree. I can definitely agree that it was better, but with mine, like I think next time I take it, there's a few things. Not 13 milligrams, go outside, ponder. I think like
Mhm,
with those three things, that's going to make the trip significantly better.
mhm. And it was our first time taking four hose, so the research, and we could have looked up a little more, but we kind of jumped right in there, and that's us.
Hmm.
But it was a learning experience, like most psychedelic trips. About the four hose,
That is
but
true. I think part of it is just like a lot of the big psychs, definitely the Holy Trinity, mushrooms, mescaline, and acid, and maybe a few of the second tiers like 2CB. A lot of information about those I just have memorized because of how frequently I see it. And I
mhm.
think it was just laziness, really, which is why I didn't look too heavily into the four hose.
uh, the next, I want to speak a little bit about 4-ACO DMT as well. Um, Alexander Shulgin synthesized the four hose 4HOMET, but he did not synthesize the 4-ACO. I think that was actually Albert Hoffman.
Really, Hoffman created ACO.
Yeah, I'm fairly certain it's Albert Hoffman.
I had no idea. That's really interesting.
But it was before I think I don't know exactly when Shogun's time lines up with Hoffman's, but I'm pretty sure it's afterwards,
Okay, yeah, I
sometime.
might be full of shit. I think Hoffman was early 1900s. Shulgin was like more in the 70s. I think that's the timeline. Like Hoffman was more in the 20s and 30s, and Shulgin was more in the 70s.
But I think we won't go into like the largest fucking explanation about what this chemically is and who synthesized it and whatnot. If you want to do that, you're gonna have to find some picklers and tickle, and you're gonna have to read through the biographies. If you if you want to make some in your basement or whatnot, I think you can buy 4-ACO DMT actually on the internet for, I think it's legal in the United States.
Yeah, I think it's just a not for human consumption test chemical.
Research substance, yeah. So if you hear this and you want to go experience it, go fucking buy you some, mate. I think it runs about what, 60 the quarter gram,
Yeah, something like somewhere in there between
somewhere
50 and
around
65 a quarter
50 and
gram.
60 a quarter gram. Fucking you take probably 10 a trip. If you're a normal person, if you fucking hate yourself, you can pay 25, whatever. No judgment, if you hate yourself and whatnot. But
Yeah, I read upward like around 30. That's when people stop saying like, "Hey, this was a really cool thing." About 30 is
those are the, like, I've really fucked up my life moments. But this had to be earlier in the month, so I'm not remembering as solidly as the four hosts. But I had made some. I had, let me back up. I had bought some golden teacher mushrooms from a guy,
Mhm.
from a guy. and I had made some Jello shots out of them with some, strawberry Jello. And looking back on it, one packet of Jello makes a lot of Jello shots, and really, I don't really care for Jello, so I kind of fucked up. I fucked up honestly, and the mushroom shots. If you had 2 or 3, you were like, it was like taking this, like eating a stem. You know what I mean? Like it was a kind of a low,
Above microdose,
more,
but
yeah,
not
above
not really a trip.
microdose, but not really a trip. Like it'd be over in 2-3 hours. So, I eat some of these throughout the week. I just snack on the bitches. But when it comes to the time to eat, to trip, I eat about 6. Hold on, man. I eat about 6 of them, and I think I take about 10 milligrams of the 4-ACO. And I kind of have a little antsiness when I'm building up to the trip, so I just decide to go to the gym, right? And when I get to the gym, I just hop on the elliptical and just start my 30-minute workout like I usually do. And 20 minutes in, I say it it kicks in, like you can definitely feel it now. Like I kind of felt like a tingling in my body, whatnot beforehand, but I take like 20 minutes in, I stare down at like the timer, and I just kind of zone out. Like the background around the timer starts to fizzle and fade and like blur together. I'm like, whoo, this is gonna be pretty powerful. I think it was just like exercising made my body process it faster or whatever. That's my guess. But
Would you say that the exercising brought it on quicker?
yeah, I'd say the exercising brought it on quicker. I got caught up in a text, but when I got back to the room, like I left and I come back to the room. Actually, I hop off the escalator. Hop off the elliptical, and my legs kind of feel like they want to keep running. Like I've been kind of moving that same way for 30 minutes, and so when I hop off, I'm feeling kind of like I'm still stimulating those same muscles to keep moving in the same pattern. So that was kind of eerie at the same time. When I come back up to my room, there's these maintenance guys, right? And they had been in and out all week, fucking around, cleaning up, air quotation marks, fucking about, more likely.
If you were to have known that they were in your room, would you have just like walked around the complex as opposed to go into the room?
I don't know. I mean, they usually don't go in my. I mean, they don't go in my room. Like they more stay in the rest of the apartment, but they were still influential. So I get to the door, and as soon as I'm getting to the door, he's opening my door. So like we kind of have this awkward, like, "Oh, you live here?" I'm like, "Yeah, I live here." And what are you doing? And they're all just about to clean the carpet and whatnot.
Okay.
So I go to my room and take a shower, trying to cool off temperature, and also like cool off from the workout, I guess the term they call it. And while I'm cooling off, I mean, I'm taking the shower and it's kind of relaxing, but at the same time, my heart rate is kind of slowing down. Like my heart rate still going pretty hard, way past like 20 minutes when I think it's gonna quit. And so I hop out the shower and I'm like, damn, I don't really feel good. Like I feel pretty bad, like sick, kind of nauseous, but really just, just not right, just kind of sick. And I lay in bed and I'm like, damn, I really don't fucking feel good, man. And I just kind of get into this dark, kind of deep headspace. And I want to preface this by saying I had been dry off a pot for a few days, and I was kind of at odds at the same time with my cannabis usage. Like I mean, I wasn't feeling like it was ruining my life, but I definitely feel like I was abusing it. And at the same time, I'm struggling with these withdrawals from pot, and kind of, the idea of like, being so uh being so accountable to just like an herb. Like,
Hmm.
I mean, I'm more than this. I can get past this. Like, it was fighting with me, like my pride and my, integrity, and like, man, this feels really shitty. And
Hmm.
if you've ever been in that space, you know what I'm talking about. And I'll save like kind of the bad thoughts and whatnot, but I felt really bad, and it was kind of a depressing moment. But
I would say, like, I don't know if this is universal, but my freshman year of college was probably my heaviest time smoking, and it does kind of like I can definitely sympathize with where you're coming from, but at the same, it's not like having a heroin addiction. It's not even like having
mhm,
a caffeine addiction. It's just like
mhm.
you're bummed that you're not high. It's
Yeah,
just kind of like
you're just bummed out.
yeah, like there's an overall downer on you.
I would say that, we're kind of different in terms of, I've kind of realized that I definitely have a more addictive personality. Like, I get absorbed into things, and I get kind of, too deep into things, and I really get addicted to some things.
Hmm.
That's more positive, and sometimes more positive in places, and more, negative when you get into more substance abuse.
Right.
I would say, it's positive in my school life, and positive in, me being trying to be accountable for a lot of things. But at the same time, it makes me pretty anxious. And,
Hmm.
I kind of got through these, the bad part of, like, the trip.
Did the
And
4 ACO help you realize that there are good sides to having a personality that
yeah,
causes
no,
you to like delve deep into something?
no, I figured that out in the past. Like, this is something I've known, kind of. I think it's probably come to me through a drug of some sort, but,
Hmm.
this is something I've known, and kind of helps me with what I do. But I'm sitting there, and like, finally, like, a good part comes, like something that, helpful after all the shit talk I've had from the shrooms.
Hmm.
And like, really, the thing that really resonated with me was like, I kept repeating it to myself, like, I need help. Like, you can't do it all on your own. Like, you really need help. And
Hmm.
that was what resonated with me. Like, if I was going to do this, I needed the help of others. I mean, I couldn't like do it all by myself, and it's wrong to put all that stuff on yourself. And I mean, it was a revelation.
Yeah, I can understand that.
Made me feel better afterwards. I mean, I still felt like shit. Don't get me wrong.
Just like less shit.
I just felt less. I felt like shit, but I felt like, I can do this now. And I'm sitting on the floor, still feeling like shit. And I remember our bro texted me, like, he would text us, like, we had planned a call that night, and he texts me, or he kicks us. He's like, "Yo, you ready?" And like, I can't even form words at this moment. Like, I to it at the same time, and I'm like, nah. Like, there's no way. And I get up, and I'm like, I need to fucking just, you know take steps to, get out of this like rut I'm in right here, change the scene up.
Mhm.
And, take my advice from the 4-ho trip. If you ever get in a bad place, just try to change the scene up. And I go to the living room, and like I said, the carpets had just been cleaned, and so the carpets are wet, like a little bit wet from the carpet cleaner, but at the same time, they're clean and kind of cold and warm at the same time.
Mhm.
And so I just fucking walk through like the clean carpet with my bare feet, and I'm just having a grand time, man. Like, it feels really nice on my toes, and like, I'm just running my feet through it. It's
I
like a
bet that does feel
shag,
nice.
like a clean shag carpet, kind of cold with a little bit of moisture on it. And I open up my roommates. I mean, my old roommates had moved out at this point, and I had yet to get new roommates, so I'm by myself, which is another negative to the shroom trip. I don't trip well by myself, even though I do it all the time. Fucking bad ideas, but Um, I go from I just start walking back and forth from one roommate's room to the other, and they both have their carpets clean too. And I'm just fucking having like I'm happy for no apparent reason. You know what I mean? Like it's
Mhm.
almost like I was so low that my serotonin kicked back in. It was like, holy shit, you ain't got nothing going on up here, mate. And it was just a rebel. It was like a kind of coming back to normal. How you felt when you were coming kind of back to normal on your four hose? How you kind of were kind of being put back together? I would say I felt a similar way on my four ACO. Uh, I felt almost like I was a kid again, like I was dangling off the bed frames, like they were propped up against the wall, and I was playing around on them and just having a really good grand time. I would say like a little kid would if you put them in the same room.
Mhm.
I've had experiences like that before where I've kind of like felt like I've reverted like 10, 20 years back, not quite 20, maybe 15. Um, Definitely the first time we took mescaline was an amazing experience, like a time portal. And
Mhm.
this experience for a few hours was very similar. Just an enjoyable, kind of pure moment.
Yeah, that I can definitely understand that. Those feelings of like being in constant awe and feeling like you're a kid again. Uh, those are normal with the I don't know what you call them, but psilocybin and psilocybin-esque compounds.
Hmm. Definitely beautiful. Like I can see how people, use that to. I mean, I've heard a lot about mushrooms and depression therapy, and I think it's possible with the right therapist. There's going to be like psychotherapist in the future,
Hmm.
and with a psychotherapist, I think it's possible. But if you fucking went out and bought ate the mushrooms and thought you were going to cure your depression just by eating them, you're fucked up because you're wrong. Like you're going to go worse. You're going to go worse, and you're not going to like it. You
You
may feel
definitely
better.
need some kind of professional to guide you.
You need some kind of professional or even like a good friend to
Yeah.
guide you, but you do not want to do it on your own, and be wary of just trying to do it on your own. You need helpmates. uh, in terms of memorable things from my 4 ACO trip, I'll try to keep it short because we talked a good amount about four hose.
Hmm.
But I would say, looking back on it all, 4 ACO DMT almost indistinguishable from mushrooms. There's not a difference. I mean, honestly, I don't think there's a difference at all from the highs you experience from both. Maybe you lose a little bit of nausea from eating mushrooms, but
Yeah,
that's it,
when
honestly.
when you told me that, that got me really excited because I have yet to try the 4 ACO. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Um, yeah, I honestly don't know why 4 ACO isn't more popular. I think it's just lack of word of mouth and lack of advertisement. The small community there already is, and the kind of I guess I would say not putting a stigma on it, but psychedelic users are definitely kind of going to shy away from the synthesized chemicals, I would say.
Yeah,
And
a
so
lot of
that's what.
people. I think the big problem with it is it's labeled a research chemical, and
Mhm.
when a lot of people hear that, they think like, oh,
Tumors in your
this,
brain.
yeah, this is gonna eat holes in your brain. This is unsafe. There's no way this is like, there's no way I'm going to take this without realizing that LSD is a research chemical, MDMA is a research chemical. Um, I guess mescaline HCl maybe could be considered a research chemical. I'm actually not 100% sure about that. But damn, I forgot my other point.
I'm kind of absorbing in this, dude. Like they did a pretty good job with the facial hair. Like that's pretty similar to what facial hair looks like to me. Mine looks really weird on acid. I really don't like it, but but that is a good artist representation. Um,
That's interesting to
yeah,
look at.
For ACO DMT, I would say probably one of the better drugs to take if you're looking for something that isn't, the Holy Trinity.
Oh yeah. Sorry, I did just remember my point. I think part of why it's not more well known is because if you go online, at least in my experience, about half the reports are good, half are bad about
Mhm.
4-ACO. And the half that are bad will be like, so I just took 40 milligrams and I'm not having
Yeah,
a great time.
75 milligrams and I'm having a bad time. Like, what you fucking think, man? Like, come on. Like, you're getting everybody a bad name. Like, you don't fucking go out and eat a quarter of mushrooms and be like, yeah, I had a bad time. Like, of course you are, man. You asked for it. Fuck. So, I would say for ACO, in my opinion, if you want to completely replace it with your psilocybin, I'd say go for it. There, at the same time, I want to preface that uh, not a lot of research has been done into research chemicals like 4-ACO and how it's going to affect you long term. Same could be said with psilocybin. So before you go and start eating half grams of the stuff, maybe wait for some like medical stuff to come out. If you want to trip on every now and then, fine, but definitely don't. I don't. You can't get addicted to this stuff. I don't know, but
Before
be
we
wary.
close,
Yeah.
I was wondering, so with some of the, I think they're called entheogens, the psychedelic plants. A lot of people say the entheogens have there's like an ancient presence to them. You feel like you're a student to the master that
Mm,
you just ingested. And when I say this, the two that I immediately think of that I personally experienced would be mescaline and mushrooms.
mushrooms. Yeah.
People usually throw ayahuasca in there as well. Do
Yeah, I
you
definitely throw ayahuasca in there, but I never tried it.
Right, yeah. Do you think that I know it didn't sound like a very spiritual trip, but do you think if you have more experience with it, that the 4-ACO DMT could like have those spiritual properties,
I
like take on the ideas of or these characteristics of like an ancient teacher?
I definitely think it's possible. Um, that's an interesting idea in itself because I used to believe in the ancient spirit of the mushroom and whatnot, and I still kind of do believe in like a presence,
Hmm.
something there. I believe there's something there more than we know. Uh, but in my mind, I think a lot of the learning and whatnot is kind of, I don't know the direct word, kind of an an event we make with our brain. Like
Hmm.
when you're eating mushrooms, you kind of, you can kind of force yourself. I'm describing this shittily, but I think it's kind of a trick we play on ourselves. When you're eating mushrooms and you have such an outstanding, you know, unbelievable experience, something you never had in your life. In the past, people, have associated that with religious experiences, and I mean, when you're having something that profound, it's hard not to associate it with something not of this earth because it's so profound. And so what I'm trying to say here is we can kind of fool ourselves into thinking sometimes that something has a like a spirit to it if we believe it has a spirit to it. If we think in our minds, this is from the earth and whatnot, we can kind of associate and form that idea in our head. I'm not saying that there's not, and I'm not saying trying to bash it, but at the same time, I'm saying we can kind of look at that as an explanation as well. Um,
That is understandable. I know with like the 2CE and the 2CB, those just feel like, and LSD. I'm not gonna actually, no, I would throw LSD into the teacher family for
I
me
wouldn't.
personally.
I
Um,
wouldn't. I know you would, but there's also an aspect of being immersed into the drug.
Mm-hmm.
And 1 foot in, 1 foot out, drugs like 2CB, let's see, 2CB, MDMA, LSD to me, they can kind of be more, I say the term surfacey, but they're not as profound and they're not as immersive. Like I'm not 100% in the trip, and it's not going to tell me what's going to, like, when the drugs start dictating to you what's going to happen, that's when it's more of a immersive and profound experience to me. Like
Mm-hmm.
with shrooms and mescaline, like you're not, that drug could take you anywhere it fucking wants to take you, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
With LSD you can kind of direct it, but when you're being really influenced, that's when you kind of get that deity, the deity complex in your mind, I believe.
See, I know definitely with mushrooms before, and with the mescaline, there's been times where I can understand why people call these plant teachers, because I do kind of feel a presence, as opposed to 2CE and 2CB, which, while thoroughly enjoyable, I'm very aware I'm on a drug. Like, I'm not fooling myself that this is that I'm going to have these grand revelations, or that I'm going to come out of this a changed person, or I'm going to learn something that I didn't know before. Although I will say, oh,
did
sorry,
you know LSD causes brain melting?
No, I didn't. That's surprising. I would have thought that that'd be the four hose.
Nope, it's right here in this one child at a time drug outreach program. You need.
Brain melting. Who would have
I
thought?
didn't mean to interrupt you.
And here I thought all it did was activate the same centers that get activated when you're a child, or make you more creative. No, that's melting your brain. But
the egg in the frying pan. I think that's a little dated for our generation, but
that's funny. But yeah, the final, like, going back to like the I guess ancient presence. Again, even though I'm aware LSD is synthesized, I don't know. One trip, I was sitting on the balcony by myself at night, staring into the night sky, and I was just like repeating to myself over and over again, like, God damn, I love LSD. I wish I could give it a hug. I wish I could take it out on a date. Like, I just want to show it appreciation for all it does to me. And I started to feel this like presence of a woman, this feminine presence that was like, that it understood and reciprocated my feelings. And I was like, thank you, LSD. I'm glad we had this little, this bonding moment.
It's definitely a beautiful experience.
Top tier, man. Top tier. I love Lucy. What can I say?
I definitely, I know what you mean when the first time we took mescaline and I met Mescalito. Definitely a beautiful experience. Not necessarily the second time when Mescalito took his revenge, because
Mescalito had a few too many beers at the bar and came back and beat us.
Yeah, Mescalito giveth and Mescalito taketh, and sometimes he takes more than he gives, but you know, you do have those beautiful moments that you remember forever, I feel like. I mean, I say forever, but I've only been tripping for like 2 years. But I definitely won't forget my negative, my bad shroom trip, where I kind of met this deity that I think I associated more with myself afterwards, you know, thinking about it. Like a subconscious communication with myself. But that's also another thing. Like you don't really have that conscious subconscious communication, and your brain may just register it as a like a foreign object, because that's easier to understand than like yourself talking to you.
That is true. Yeah, I didn't consider that, but that does make sense.
There's a lot of things to think about, and I think we can find a solid hypothesis and, you know, a ton of explanations, but it's never going to be, you know, directly explained until Obama signs it in. Where's the change, Obama? Where's the change?
I still can't buy LSD out of fucking drugstore. What the fuck was all that talk about change for?
Ain't no damn change. But My voice kind of tired now. We've been talking for quite a while. Good cast.
Yeah, it went longer than I thought it would.
The future of Schedule 1 is going to be a little different. We're going to do some new stuff in the future, but it's going to be kind of a different kind of feel. I meant to say before this cast started that I kind of wanted to shorten the episodes a little bit to make them more easier to watch, in one sitting. But we talked really long about this one, so and we're talking longer about it now. So I'm kind of fighting my own opinion. But thanks for watching, fam. Tune in another time. We'll be talking about something else where we get high, unless the pigs catch us.
So yeah, see you then.
You're just gonna give our fans that little goodbye.